Yeah, well, the first company that I started was a film production company, and my father is a film producer. So it kind of came pretty natural to me just to do that during high school and start just producing first music videos for friends of mine who were making music like I was. And those were my first experiences. So I started to experiment a little bit with video, and I figured out at that time that you could actually send a video to someone and they would probably pass that on to a friend via email, and then you could track the email addresses, and they would send it on to more friends if the video was just good enough, and you would get more email address. And we're like, wow, this is actually cool. The better the video we produce, the more people will actually see it. So those were the first forms of virality, and that was so inspiring to me. And although that company never made much money, I was able to raise venture capital. And that was in 2005, so a long time ago. And at that time, 5 million euros was a lot of money, and I raised that money, and we went out and we built a social network. And the social network was basically built around that hypothesis that at some point, media will be consumed in social media. That was like a very visionary hypothesis at that time. But it turns out this is exactly what happened, right? And we figured out that we can't make it when we had burned 4. So we had 1 million in the bank. And our investors and us together, we said, this is not going to work. So we returned the money, and they gave me a job. They said, hey, why don't you just work for us? You did everything you could. We saw you worked really hard. You did it in a fair way. Didn't work out. That's fine. And they gave me a job, and that was the first time I came here, because that job was here. And we really enjoyed being here, and I really loved the life here. A lot of these things that we've done were just like super cool experiences. And that was the beginning of it. The next thing I did then was I actually didn't start that company. I was an early employee at a video games company. And that video games company was built around the hypothesis that at some point people will pay for virtual items in video games. Because at that time, if you wanted to play a video game, you would have to buy a €60, $60 box and install it on your PC. And we had seen in Asia how people were actually playing video games for free and just doing in-app purchases. That was before Farmville, before everything. And we were like, this is a really interesting business model, because in the end we can sell as many of them as we want to, because they're basically just entries in a database. And so that was a great experience for us. And the company became pretty successful. And it was the first time that it gave me a little bit of money, especially after we sold it to a large TV channel, to start playing a little bit more with it and taking a little bit more risk.
One thing I always think a lot about as I reflect on my journey is that by just doing things, you end up in very interesting places and are given very interesting opportunities. And it sounds like from your first venture led you to basically coming here to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
How is your take now as you have even more years of experience and I've seen this pattern maybe repeat again and again? Is this an advice that you would tell, a young founder out there saying, hey, just do things. This will probably put you in the nicest places and follow your unique curiosity? Is this something you would kind of put on a wall and say, yeah, that's how to live life?
Yeah, I think one of the wisest things you can say about business is, in business you only have to be right once, right? Be right once. If you're right enough, it's going to make you very successful, right? You can build a company around one thing that you do really well and one thing that you've probably done earlier than anybody else. So in business, you only have to be right once. In order to be right once, you have to do many different things. In my case, I guess, it took me a while and a couple of iterations until I had the first exit that was bigger. But once I had realized how it works, it kind of became a little bit of a formula. And the formula, obviously, many people say that revolves a little bit around the people, but it's not only that. A part of it is execution. But the other thing that I think is like completely underestimated is timing. I think timing is everything. And I'm not sure if people in Berlin or so still talk about the Samba brothers, but here they are still a topic every now and then. It comes up when we Germans come here, because they were so blatantly stealing ideas. And then they always said, but ideas are worth nothing, which is true. I always say it's like when you go surfing and you go surfing on a day with no waves, you will have a really hard time. But you go surfing on a day with good waves, you're going to get to shore somehow. You go surfing on a day with a bad surfboard, but with big waves, you're going to get to the shore. It depends on the waves much more than on your surfboard. And that's what I'm telling everyone, that you got to find an idea that is right, and you can't know. You will have to do 15 things before one really works.
If you enjoyed this clip, click here to watch the full episode and subscribe to never miss clips like this.